Hello, I am Paula Bennett and welcome to my New Zealand Herald podcast, Ask Me Anything. Now, one thing I've learnt in life is it's never too late to learn something new. So on this podcast, I talk to people from all walks of life to hear about how they got to where they are, get some advice and guidance on some of life's biggest questions. Right, bit of a different episode for you today. We're nearing the end of season 5 of Ask Me Anything, and we have had so much great advice across the season. But today, we've brought in a big gun for some really practical advice on a topic that is often top of mind for many Kiwis, property. Ed McKnight is the resident economist at Opus Partners. He is also the co-host of the Property Academy podcast and co-author of Wealth Plan, How to Invest in New Zealand Property and Retire on Real Estate. Wow, he is with me. Hey, Ed, how are you?
Oh, Paula, it's a great honour to be speaking with you.
Oh, it's good of you to come on. 2 rules for my podcast, so it's quite easy. I do, first is I'm allowed to ask you anything. Are you comfortable with that?
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to be great.
You don't have a choice anyway. What do you do? No. Whatever you do, don't ask me about. No. And then the other one, I call it the safe space, which means even if I ask you something and you say something stupid, I'm not going to judge you on it.
Just quietly in your head, right? Oh, can you believe he said that?
Oh, my God. I mean, I had to confess to Ed before we went live on this that I tried a joke at a speech this week and it went quite badly. So there you go. If you could invite anyone to dinner, who would it be?
I'd actually say my grandfather, and I'll tell you the reason why. I know, you're giving me a face, Paula.
I'm giving you the soft spot, that is gorgeous face.
But I'll tell you the reason why, because when he was alive, we didn't get on very well. And, I think for a year we didn't actually speak. And the reason I'd invite him, and I've actually thought about this, it's not some canned answer that I'm giving you, but the reason I'd invite him is I'd want to make amends. And everyone said, well, the reason you two didn't get on is because you were too similar. And I bet you if I talked to him today, I'd have a lot more respect for him because at age kind of mid-30s, he packed up life in Ireland and he brought his 3 young kids over here to New Zealand. And he started a new life in a small town called Hawera, which is in South Taranaki. And I always thought that takes a lot of gumption. And I think that's the beautiful thing about New Zealand is that so many of us, our ancestors have come from somewhere else and all of them came here seeking a better life. And I just think it'd be really nice to get into my grandfather's head and kind of hear that story, which I assume is there.
How old were you when he passed?
I would have been 15.
Yes.
So you could imagine
you'd
that
have a completely different relationship with him now. Yeah. Because you're 32?
About to turn 32, 31 at the moment.
Oh, I better not age you, had I? I've got a daughter older than you, just so you know. So we've set that so that I can mother you.
How good's your chicken pot pie, Paula? Maybe I'll let you.
Oh, smoked fish pie. That's the one. It's to die for, says she. Okay, what we're going to do, Ed, is in the first part, we're going to get to know you a little bit better, and then we're going to spend a bit more time on the second part of the podcast because everyone always wants to talk property. I, of course, am at Bailey's Real Estate. I mainly do commercial, I've got to say. It is more of my jam. But I was talking to the residential guys this morning, so I said to them, I'm an expert for the podcast this afternoon. Hey, so you're interesting. So you are only 31. There you go. And you're an economist. So have you studied that at university?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. I did both economics at Auckland University and Waikato, but I also did a double major with opera singing at the same time.
I knew the opera, and that's why I was trying to put the two things together and couldn't quite get there. So, there's so many questions in there, right? So how on earth did you know that you were interested and could sing opera?
Oh, well, I got into it when I was probably 10 years old. And, you go along to church and you sing along with everybody else. And if you're the one who always wants to be the loudest, as that was probably me, then we just got singing lessons and it continued for years,
But there's
well
a lot
over
of
decade.
genres. There's a lot of genres in there. And opera is a particular one with a higher, well, I would have thought higher skill level. So for you as a 10, 11-year-old to go down that path is interesting in itself.
Well, I just thought it was quite interesting. And I think that was kind of when you go and get singing lessons as a 10, 11-year-old, that's kind of they start you on really light classical kind of stuff. And then you kind of graduate into it if you're kind of inclined that way, if you kind of think, oh, this is kind of cool. And so like many skills, you start with your first lesson and you just never stop. Wow. And the most amazing thing is that I look at people who have actually made opera singing their career. And there are some amazing people. There's a guy called Felipe Manu, who was my flatmate when we were 21 years old. He went to the same school as me. And he was a very normal guy from South Auckland. And he happened to start singing lessons as well. And in August this year, I'm going to go see him play the lead at the Sydney Opera House, and he's made it his career all around the world. And that's a really good example of if you've got some talent and you start with your first lesson and you never stop, you will get somewhere.
So there's something about dedication, right? And there is something to really committing. John Key used to tell me that, and he had a particular story about squash was his thing. And he would say, he had two people he knew. Both were talented, but one was supremely talented. It wasn't that one that went onto the world stage. It was the other one because they had hard work and dedication behind them.
Yeah, and not stopping. So, I'm not saying that I'd be as successful as my friend Felipe if I never stopped, but I'm the one who stopped, and he's the one who's at the Sydney Opera House because he never stopped going. I think there's a really good lesson in that. It wasn't just that he's very talented, though he absolutely is. It's that he didn't stop.
Now, you believe that there is a link between an analytical brain and being musically talented, don't you? Talk me through that.
Well, I personally do think that. It's quite amazing when you go and talk to people who are highly analytical. Often they've got some sort of artistical musical side. And you see it all the time. I remember when I was doing a singing competition when I was very young, I would have been 15 or 16 years old, and you're standing up there and then the judges start telling you about their lives, and some of them have maths degrees. Yeah. And it's just really, there's this really strange connection between primarily maths and music that you often see with a lot of classical musicians. Now, it's not all of them. Some of them are kind of genuine creatives. But there is this weird thing that you often see people who are quite good at math are also often quite good at music. And
your entrepreneurs, so often they've got that absolute, they may not have the talent, but they've got the commitment to the arts and a genuine interest in it, isn't it? I couldn't help. I was just, I was thinking about Sir Michael Hill and, just so many people like that as well that have got, and I would put them in the sort of analytical brain as well in that sort of context. And they've gone down that kind of, he's very much into the arts and what he does. And interesting.
I mean, so much so he started his own international violin competition, which is very, very, very highly acclaimed as well. But you see it a lot with, when I worked for the Auckland Philharmonia Orchestra for a while in sponsorship, and you get to meet a lot of people who support the arts. And you often find there are a lot of accountants there, a lot of lawyers, and it's people who are quite analytical who just like it for some reason or the other, or studied music when they were kids and have just continued on that love of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so talk me through the ad that you did, because you thought you wanted to work at the ASB or something. Was that it? And so did you literally take out your own ads?
Yeah, so what I did, this was back in the day when Facebook was a little bit more loose. So I was working at the orchestra and I saw a job going, and Paula, it's so embarrassing when I tell this story because the ending is so obvious. But I saw a job going for sponsorship manager at ASB. And I thought, that sounds like a great job. I'd like to go and do that. Only issue is they wanted somebody with 7+ years experience and I had 1.5. And I thought, well, I'm not going to let that stop me, because I once went to a speech by John Key where he talked about that you got to get yourself in the room. You've got to make things happen. Okay, fine. I'm going to make it happen. And so I thought, well, how do I make myself stand out? Because I've got no experience, but I think I'm okay. So we'll just see how we go. And that was back in the day where you could target on Facebook people who worked for a specific company. So I built a website, a very basic one, talking all about why ASB should hire me. And I thought, okay, well, that's fine, but how do I get this in front of the HR managers? And so I wrote this website page about why you as an ASB employee should recommend me to the HR department, and you should go down the hall to the HR department and say, this guy's pretty interesting. He'd be a great colleague. Give him an interview. And so then I probably spent about $27.50 running these Facebook ads, targeting ASB employees living in Auckland. And, it got picked up, or it got noticed by a couple of people in their marketing team being like, well, this is very, very interesting. I got an interview, didn't get the job, but that's okay because they were very nice about it. And I got it got a bit of press, and I got job offers from quite a few different companies. So that's how I kind of progressed within my career. But I think what that was all about is, graduating with some economics qualifications and some music qualifications. I think certainly the start of my career is a bit jumbled because nobody really knew what to do with me. And so I kind of had to find my own way. And eventually I stumbled into what I'm doing now. I've been doing it for the last 5 years. And the amazing thing is those skills have come in handy just simply because, we've done a daily podcast for the last 5 years. It's a lot of presenting skills. And I didn't know it at the time, but the opera singing helped me do what I'm doing today as an economist.
So tell us what you're doing today. Just give me the upshot of the company that you're with and what your role is.
Yeah, so I'm the economist at Opus Partners, and I was really lucky. I joined when we were only 15 people as the company. And over the last 5 years, I've just had my 5th anniversary here, we've grown it to a team of about 90 people. And because of that growth and because I was part of it, I was really lucky. The owners of the business decided to cut me in as a business partner. And so I'm really lucky because I was just working on some TikTok content before I came on to talk to you. And I was reflecting that when I was 24, I was in a lot of debt. I had a lot of credit card debt, well over 15 grand. And just to put that into context, because I wasn't earning a lot at the time, I would have had to work from the 1st of January to about the 6th of June to pay off that debt. Now, that's just working, paying tax and paying off debt, not paying my rent, not paying for groceries or anything like that. It's my own fault, but I got myself into the wrong situation. And from being in that situation, standing in the shower thinking, how did I let my life become like this when I was 24, to sitting here at 31, 7 years later, I don't feel like I've made it yet. I don't think I'm some guru, but I think that, 24-year-old me would be pretty proud of the progress that's been made.
Oh, that's extraordinary. And I think it's a big story to tell as well. And I think that you're going to have some very good advice for us. So let's take a quick break, and then you are going to get all the advice you need around the property market and investing in property with Ed and me. Thanks for coming back in. Now, you are a big investor and believer in property investment. So let's start there. Why is investing in property such a good idea in your opinion?
I think the main reason is the only thing that makes property special is the fact that you can borrow money against it, right? So a lot of Kiwis, they're out there, they want to grow their wealth, but they might not have a lot of money spare that they can put into shares, KiwiSaver, term deposits, all of that kind of thing. But what a lot of people don't realise is that you can buy a house without having a lot of cash. So if I just walk you through my situation, bought a house when I was 26, It went up in value, paid down some debt, and then I thought, okay, well, I want to go and buy another house. Well, I didn't have the deposit. I hadn't saved it up. But because my house had gone up in value, I borrow some money against that house as the deposit, and I take that money that I've borrowed from the bank and I go put that down as the deposit on another investment property and I borrow some money from the bank to purchase that. And I was able to buy my second investment property with no cash. Now, we call that the no cash needed method. It is a pretty classic way that a lot of Kiwis start investing in property. Now, if you've invested in property before, you know this, and it sounds really basic. If you've never invested in property before, it can be pretty mind-blowing. So I often say to first-time investors, you're effectively using your house or houses to go and buy more houses. And then as those increase in value or you pay off some of the debt, that's where you start to earn more of a return. But it's this idea of being able to borrow money against it. That's what makes property really special. So if I think about that specific property that I bought with no cash, if it goes up in value by 10 or 20K, which, is pretty reasonable on an average year, then that 10, 20K doesn't go to the bank. I get to keep that even though I borrowed all of the money to go and purchase the property. But the thing that I'd often tell you, Paula, is we often joke that if you could borrow money against watermelons, and watermelons were insurable, and watermelons went up in value, and you could earn a rental income in order to be able to pay that mortgage, I'd be recommending that we all go invest in tropical fruit. It's not that I like houses. It's that I like that you're able to borrow money against it. You can insure it. You can earn a rental income to pay most of the costs. You're not always able to cover all of the costs with the rental income, especially when interest rates are high. But those are the factors that I like about property.
So, and then, because you've got 4 properties now, did I read that? Yeah. Now, so how hard do you think it is, though, for those that are starting out for that first home buyer, if you like? We're constantly hearing how hard it is to raise that $100,000 as the deposit. I know for me, and this was many years ago, but I didn't borrow money off my parents, but I convinced them to put their house as a caveat against mine, and I had some deposit, obviously, and that's how I actually got into the market. And within 3 years, I was able to get them off. But they were prepared to do that. But it is still hard to get into that first home, right?
It certainly can be. And what I'd kind of say, because I was on News Talk ZB the other day talking about this, and the government's changed the first home grants, or effectively gotten rid of them now. And we were talking to people calling in saying, I was about to use it for my first home and it might set me back a year or two. And the thing I was saying to a lot of them is just remember that the average age that somebody purchases their first home in New Zealand is 37 years old. And I think we sometimes get into this mindset that if you haven't done it by 26, then you're behind. No. Only 50% of first home buyers purchase before they are 37. 50% of first home buyers purchase after 37. But one thing that I'd also like to change the narrative around is just about, how many people are purchasing their first homes. A lot of people don't realise that in 2024, first home buyers are making up a bigger chunk of the market than they almost ever have. So in a standard year, somewhere between 18 to 20% of the market of the houses bought are sold to first home buyers. At the moment, we're well above 20%. I think we hit 25% recently. So it's a really good time for first home buyers right now. So that tells me that a lot of Kiwis out there, they're not letting high house prices or what they're reading in the media get in the way of their first home dreams.
But do you think that's because of the market? And, what you are seeing is a smaller market right now, not as many people buying, and as a consequence, you could have that proportion slightly distorted?
Oh, well, that's certainly part of it, that it's a quieter market, property prices are down, and first home buyers are therefore taking advantage of the market that's there. But I always think, as an economist, you can always find reasons to justify why, that number looks good, but actually, it's not really good. Or that number looks bad, but actually, it's not that bad. Like, there are always reasons for this. But the counter to that kind of view is, interest rates are really high. Usually, that could scare a lot of first home buyers off. House prices are still high compared to what they've been over the last 10 years, but first home buyers are still being active and out there purchasing.
Yeah, which is fantastic, right? Because it is such an opportunity to build wealth, to give stability, quite frankly, as well. I did quite a lot of study in the States on that kind of asset building for the poor and the difference it makes through the generations and that sense of self-worth and the ability to take risks. But it comes with risks, right? and there's no two ways about it. It is understanding the market. It is, we had someone the other day who had bought a house that didn't have full code of compliance and it was when the banks kind of couldn't lend enough money, to save themselves. And they're now being penalised for it. You know what I mean? Like, it's getting really, really tough for them. So how do you think people can get themselves better educated if they want to get into that property market, particularly for an investment?
I think the big thing is a lot of people educate themselves through hearsay. So we hear a lot from people who are close to us and maybe own a property or maybe one or two properties. And we take a lot of advice from them because we trust them. Oh, look, they've bought a property before, so they must know what they're doing. Often they don't know what they're doing, actually. So if the question is, how do we educate ourselves, there are some fantastic resources out there for people who want to learn about property. And it's not just our podcast. Of course, we've done about 1,700 episodes.
Wow.
Since we've done it almost every day for now on 5 years. So there's a lot of stuff out there. But the other thing that some people could consider is not just podcasts, but the Property Investor magazine is pretty good as well. Full disclosure, my company owns New Zealand Property Investor magazine, but there are a lot of resources out there if people want to learn. I think the main thing just to be aware of is not always to think that our parents or our friends know everything about property.
Yeah, that's bloody good advice. Or your hairdresser. You're sitting there a while and everyone wants to talk property,
Yeah, what I've found a lot, Paula, is that there are a lot of things that people repeat and assume are true. And I'll give you a really good example of this. So people always ask, what goes up in value the fastest? A house, a townhouse, or an apartment? And usually what people say is, well, the money's in the land, and so a house must go up fastest, then a townhouse, and then an apartment, and it's kind of in that order, 1, 2, 3. So you actually go out and you look at the data, and what you see is that, apartments go up in value way slower than a house or a townhouse. Then you go and you look at the data and say, well, what about a house versus a townhouse? So you'd be like, well, surely a house has way more land and so should go up in value faster. And it's true, they go up a little bit faster, but the difference is so much more marginal than many Kiwis would think. And so I think the lesson in there is not that everyone should go buy a townhouse. That's not the lesson at all. The lesson is sometimes we hear things repeated, but actually that's not necessarily true. Another example is with the money's in the land. And I recently wrote a column for One Roof actually looking at that. And in some cases, we actually found that just because a house has more land, that doesn't make it go up in value the fastest or faster. Might give you a few more options if you want to develop it. But actually, it's kind of the mid-sized sections that the average Kiwi can afford and the average Kiwi can buy. That's what goes up in value the fastest.
Wow. And I was going to ask, which kind of leads from that, is about maintenance as well. Or do you buy, because a townhouse and an apartment predominantly have less maintenance, right? And I don't think people, particularly if they're buying an investment that's going to be rented, really give consideration. I've just spent $6,000 on new heat pumps. Literally went in today, into one of my properties that just needed to be done, right? But you could spend that kind of money quite regularly, quite easily, if you want to keep your house up to a standard. So how much do you budget a percentage of your income or the home, or how do you manage it?
So the basic way that we usually do it is let's say you buy a new build property, so brand new, you're probably going to get away with $500 a year. And in fact, in the first couple of years, you're probably not even going to need to spend that. It's going to be really cheap. Once you get to that kind of 10 to 20 years old, maybe 30 years old, you start to say about $1,000 a year is what you're going to need a budget for maintenance. Once you get up over that 30 plus years old, that's when we say kind of $3,000 a year is what you need to budget, ballpark. But it's quite lumpy. So what I mean by that is it might cost you $1,000 1 year, then, oh no, that hot water cylinder, that's gone. That's going to cost another $8,000 to replace. And then, oh no, wait, now we've got a roof that needs to be replaced because we've bought something that's 50 or 60 years old. That's going to be 20 to 30 grand or whatever it happens to be. So I kind of do it on an annual basis. And it's kind of the older the property, the more maintenance, but just be aware that it's going to be a bit lumpy. And that's a really good point that you bring up with maintenance, because I wouldn't do it as a percentage of the property. And the reason is that sometimes, especially in small towns, like out on the west coast of the South Island, you've got a lot of cheap houses out there. And actually they get a really good rental yield. So they get a lot of rent per week compared to the value of the property. And a lot of investors look at that and say, oh, isn't that wonderful? It's got such a high rental yield. But the issue is that to replace a roof or a hot water cylinder kind of doesn't matter what the value of the property is. It's basically pretty much the same all around the country. And so one of the issues is if you just buy a cheap house that in a small part of the country, when you do need to replace the hot water cylinder or a heat pump or the roof, that makes up a huge percentage of the rent that you actually collect. And so sometimes it can be a bit of a false economy.
Yeah. Can you, okay, so I've got a few kind of questions. One, which you just led into quite nicely as well, which was, would you buy an investment property out of the town or the city that you live in? It says me confessing that I have, so I've just recently in the last 12 months, purchased something and I looked carefully at the yield, which I was thinking you should probably explain to some people, and really saw the benefits in kind of getting out of the Auckland market, to be honest, and spreading my investment more around the country.
Yeah, big fan of that, Paula. And I'll tell you the reason why. So a lot of people look at like New Zealand property prices. And if you Google it, New Zealand property prices graph, it will look like almost always property prices are going up. But that's not true. That's the New Zealand average. But in Auckland, you're going to see periods where property prices are quite flat for a time and then they boom. So, for example, between about 2009-ish and 2015, property prices in Wellington were flat for ages, even though the average priced property in New Zealand was going up. And so the reason that I suggest diversifying around the country is that if you've got a property in Auckland and you've got a property in Wellington or a property somewhere else, maybe the Auckland property market's flat, but that one in Wellington's going up in value. Then the Wellington market's flat, but the Auckland one's going up in value. And so the purpose of diversifying or buying property around the country is that you can more closely approximate the New Zealand property market, and then you're going to see your wealth grow a lot more consistently. If you only buy in one specific town, you're going to have a lot more flat periods where your wealth's not going up, and then you're going to have these crazy boom periods.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because of the changes that we're looking at with the current government, with the landlords and things, there was an advantage in looking at new builds. Do you still see that, and do you have an opinion, particularly for an investment property, of new build versus established residential?
Well, I should just say that our company only focuses on new builds, right? So just before I tell you what I think...
Yeah, why?
I just want to put that by...
Yeah,
I just want to let everyone know, I've got a reason to be biased.
Yeah,
but,
good.
the truth is that not everybody should buy a new build. That is absolutely true. So the benefits previously were really around tax and interest deductibility. Now, there are still benefits to going for a new build, which is that you need a 20% deposit rather than a 30% deposit. And if you think about your house going up in value, the return is a lot higher if you put in a smaller deposit, because you put in less money, but your house still goes up in value, so you can get a better return. On top of that, the Reserve Bank put out some modelling, and they said if somebody currently owns one investment property today, how many could they buy over the next 10 years once the DTIs come in? And what they said is if you buy just existing properties, so second-hand properties, they're ones that we're all used to purchasing. If you currently own one investment property today, over the next 10 years, we think you can buy 3 more. But if you decide to go and buy new build properties, we think you can buy another 5 more over the next 10 years. Now, that's just one example in one scenario with one property investor, but that kind of shows you that if you invest in new builds, you're going to be able to grow your portfolio much faster. Now, those are the pros, but let me tell you all the cons. The main con of a new build is you can't renovate it. So if you go out and you buy probably what I call a second-hand home, one that somebody's lived in before, you've got the opportunity to renovate it and add value. So let's say that it's currently worth $600K and you decide to spend $50,000 renovating that, so you're in for $650. Maybe by the end of it, it's worth $700 or $750K. Now, all of a sudden, you've made what we call instant equity of $50,000 to $100,000. And so some investors look at that and say, absolutely, that's what I'm into. I want to be involved renovating properties because I know I can actively grow my wealth really quickly.
Yeah.
And if you're that way inclined, buying what we call existing or second-hand homes, that could absolutely be the right strategy for you. If you're sitting there and you're saying, do you know what? I'm not really into renovating. I don't want to get my hands dirty. I don't want to be too involved. I want something a little more hands-off. That's generally when you go for the new build.
Isn't part of the problem with new build, and I suppose my question is as well as, are there companies that do this, is that you have to pay more up front or borrow and pay, and you don't get the rent until it's built. So, I'm paying a mortgage off my new build at the moment and it won't be finished until the end of the year. I can do that, right? So I'm in a privileged position that I can do that. But I was thinking, well, that might be harder. But then I've heard ads from companies that say you don't pay, we don't want any money until it's ready for you to turn the key.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, Paula. So there are two different types of new builds, right? So the one that you first talked about, and maybe, I don't know your personal situation, but this might be what you've purchased, is what we call a progressive payments build. So that's when you've probably purchased the land, you're paying a mortgage on the land, and now you've hired a building company to build that property for you. And so that would have been in your contract. So you've probably borrowed a couple of $100K to buy the land, you're paying the mortgage on that, and then you're making those progressive payments as that property is being built. Now, that's one type of property, and the benefit to that is that once it's built, you'll probably get some of that instant equity. By the time it's built, it's probably going to be worth more than the total amount that you've paid because you're taking a bit of risk there, you're making some payments. So that's the benefit. The con is, of course, that you're currently paying a mortgage, but you're not getting any rental income. That's one type of new build. The second type of new build, and this is the one that we focus more on at Opus Partners, what's called a turnkey property. So that's where you just put down a 10% deposit, and then once the property's built, you pay the rest of the money. So effectively, you don't have a big fat mortgage until you've got rental income coming in. So often we talk about new builds as just one group, but actually there are those two different types.
Should you be concerned at the moment with the way the market is on the company that you go in with? We've seen developers going under. We read the stories. Not all of them are small. So there is some genuine kind of risk there. We've seen, particularly I live in Te Atu in Auckland, and you're just seeing so many of the infill housing going up, which, hey, people have got opinions on it, but I'm pro-development, so I have to be supportive. But, how do you do your due diligence when thinking about whom does that build for you?
Yeah, that's such an important question. And especially if you're going down that first avenue of progressive payments, because the risk is, let's say you've bought that piece of land, right? And you're currently paying a mortgage on it. Let's say the house gets half built and then the developer goes under. Now you're in a real pickle. And it's not just that. Maybe you've got a master build guarantee. And so, they're going to organise somebody else to come and finish off that property for you. But in the meantime, you've already borrowed $400,000 or $500,000. And while they're messing around trying to find you a builder to finish the property, you're still paying the mortgage on that. So that's where it really starts to become an issue if you're in that contract. If you're in a turnkey style where you only put in a small deposit, then you pay the rest at the end, that's less of an issue because even if the builder falls over, you get your deposit back because it's held by the lawyers. So in terms of how do you do your due diligence, the first question I'd be asking is, who am I signing the contract with? Because what we've seen a couple of times is people might buy off one of those franchise builders, people like a Golden Homes or a Signature Homes, and I'm not specifically talking about any one company, but those types of companies. And you think, well, that's great. I am investing with somebody who is really reputable.
Yeah.
But then it turns out that you didn't sign the contract with the master franchise of whatever that building company is. You signed it with the local franchise in Tauranga or the local franchise in Hamilton or wherever you happen to be in the country. Now, that's one single small building company, and if they fall over, that's where you can really come unstuck. So people can sort of sometimes lull themselves into a false sense of security because you think you're using a big company, but you're not using a big company. You are using a small franchise, local franchise of that big builder.
Bloody good advice, that.
So first thing I'd do is see, who am I actually signing the contract with? The second thing I'd then ask is, what are the guarantees around that? So are they a master build? If it's master build and you're doing that progressive payment build that you're doing, Paula, that's when you... I feel like I'm giving a free consultation here, which is quite lovely,
Thank
really.
you.
It's quite nice. And then if you've got a master build and that developer falls over, kind of okay, because then, sweet, this person, they're going to organise another builder to come in and finish the job. So that gives you a little bit more security. Master build isn't the only type of, it's not an insurance scheme, but a protection scheme. There is another one run by, I think it's called Halo or New Zealand Certified Builders, but I'd want some type of scheme like that. Some building companies from those big franchise home builders that you hear about, kind of like what I named before, they might have their own schemes. I'd want my lawyer to dig into the details to protect me.
Okay. I really, that was, I think, really helpful. And I think just thinking about getting into the market, you know, I'm one of those people that always goes, you know, is your cup half full or half empty, who cares, take a sip. Because at the end of the day, if you're not kind of getting in, then, you know, it's never going to be easy because it's just not. But what you can do and how you can do it. And as you say, you know, I've gone in with a friend before and that worked for both of us. We had it absolutely iron tight. And we would never have come out with $40,000 each that would then set us off on a different direction. So there's all sorts of kind of options. I suppose I would just say to anyone that's doing this, I'm definitely not a financial advisor. And so please get the right advice and talk to the right people so that you know, kind of what you're doing and what you're getting up to. Hey, so Ed, this is called Ask Me Anything, and I've done all the asking, so I now like to give you a bit of an opportunity to ask me something if you would like to.
Yeah, I do, Paula. So one thing that I'm really interested in, and this is a good exercise for anybody at home, is you've started investing in property. So if I was to ask you to think forward 15 years in the future, 20 years in the future, and you think about your perfect day in retirement once you've stopped doing the Ask Me Anything podcast, what are you doing on that perfect day in retirement and who are you with? Well,
we'll go less than 20 years because I'd be happy to be dead in 20, 25 years because I just think old age is a bit of a bitch. But so, yeah, for me, I want choices. So hence why I am quite heavily invested right now and working quite hard. I'm 55 years old. So for me, it is being able to travel if I want to. It is being able to spend time with my grandchildren, and I would like to be able to take them on a trip and have really unique, special experiences with them that they will always remember and will be part of that. So, you know, I don't need the flashiest car. I actually don't need the flashiest house. You know, that sort of stuff actually doesn't really worry me that much, you know, practical and works. But if I suppose what I'm trying to save for and invest for at the moment is so that I can have experiences that, let's be honest, can be quite expensive.
And if I was to ask you, Paula, so you're travelling overseas with your grandkids and you want to give them some unique, special experiences. Where are you travelling and what sort of experiences do you want to have with them?
Well, it might vary because you kind of go to suit their personalities as well. And I think they're all going to be different. And quite frankly, in 20 years' time, I'll probably have great-grandchildren. So that's kind of cool. So in that respect, you are kind of matching them. But yeah, you know, I haven't done India. I haven't done, you know, there's places I haven't been, which I think they could find really interesting. My boys at the moment are just full-on active. So you'd want to take somewhere that exhausted them. Vietnam, I want to take them there. I promised them I'll take them to Niue in the next 12 months because I just think they will snorkel and jump off rocks and absolutely love it. But I think I want to be a bit more adventurous with them when they're a bit older and I'm a bit older.
And so you're off on these cool experiences with your grandkids. You said you wanted those experiences to be ones that they would remember. Thinking about, we started this off talking about my grandfather and how I remember him. How do you want your grandkids to remember you? They'll remember me as a dominant, big personality and I just do, as I say, I like to do with them.
I didn't want to be that grandparent that was like, oh my God, do we have to go visit Granny? And we're going to sit around and it smells a bit. And she always makes those biscuits and, you know, and you tell us off for our manners. So I wanted kind of, I call it free chaos, where it's, and I just, you know, so that's how I want to be remembered. Not necessarily always fun, you know, I love the deeper conversations with them, you know, and I encourage that and, you know, and try and do that with them. But equally, you know, I want them to remember me as being, more fun, slightly chaotic and just full of love.
Yeah,
so
how beautiful.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll keep working on that, but I am really, really, really lucky. Now, it has been absolutely fantastic to chat to you today, Ed. If people want to hear more, then they can go to Property Academy podcast. I've been having a bit of a listen in, and I just found it on iHeart, but they can find it anywhere, I presume.
Yeah, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you want to.
Yep, easy. That's good. And that's it for another episode of Ask Me Anything. You can get in touch with me by emailing askpaula@nzherald.co.nz. You know, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on LinkedIn, you can Instagram me, although I'm useless at getting back on that. But make sure you just follow Ask Me Anything on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Paula Bennett. Ask Me Anything. Goodbye.